Welcome back to our channel. Comment where you're watching from today as we dive into an incredible story of redemption, strength, and the power of family. In the pristine auditorium of Westbrook Academy, where privilege echoed through marble, halls and success was measured in designer labels, 15-year-old Christina Schwarzenegger sat alone in the back row. The morning light streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor where hundreds of students gathered for the annual Achievement Day assembly. The air was thick with excitement as Headmaster Thorn Archer took the stage, his tailored suit and commanding presence demanding immediate silence from the chattering students. Among them, Sienna Blake and Aurora James exchanged knowing glances, their perfectly manicured hands clutching their phones as they watched Christina from across the room. Christina pulled at the sleeve of her simple navy sweater, a stark contrast to the sea of luxury brands surrounding her. Her father's words from that morning echoed in her mind. Remember, strength isn't about what you wear or who you know, it's about who you are. But those words felt distant now, drowned out by the whispers and stares that had followed her since her first day at Westbrook. Celeste Quinn, the student body president, gracefully ascended the stage. Her voice carried through the speakers with practiced precision as she began announcing the nominees for the upcoming charity gala committee. And representing the sophomore class, she paused, her smile never wavering. We have Dahlia Rhodes, Freya Bell, and... A subtle smirk crossed her face. Christina Schwarzenegger. The whispers turned to barely concealed laughter. Nova Wren, seated in the front row, didn't bother hiding her amusement. Guess they had to include someone from the scholarship program, she stage whispered to Juniper Cross, loud enough for those around them to hear. Christina felt her cheeks burn, but she sat straighter, her father's teachings about dignity and resilience running through her veins. The same father who had taught her that true strength came from within, who had built himself up from nothing to become one of the most respected figures in both athletics and politics. Headmaster Archer continued with the assembly, but the atmosphere had shifted. Ophelia Blair, usually quiet and observant, raised her hand with practiced innocence. Headmaster, shouldn't the committee representatives have experience with high society events? Her question dripped with false concern. The auditorium fell, silent as footsteps echoed from the back entrance. Heavy, purposeful steps that Christina knew by heart. The familiar silhouette of Arnold Schwarzenegger filled the doorway, his presence immediately commanding attention without a word spoken. Delilah Wynne dropped her phone, the clatter breaking the stunned silence. Serafina Vale's mouth hung open as the legendary actor, former governor, and world-renowned figure made his way down the center aisle. But he wasn't walking with the air of a celebrity or politician. This was a father, his eyes fixed on the crowd that had been mocking his daughter. The whispers took on a different tone now. Iris Lennox frantically Googled on her phone, the reality of who Christina really was, finally sinking in. Maisie Knox, who had been one of the most vocal critics of Christina's second-hand clothes, suddenly found great interest in studying her shoes. Arnold reached the front of the auditorium, but instead of taking the stage, he stopped next to Christina's row. His voice, that unmistakable tone known around the world, carried through the space without need for a microphone. I'm here for the assembly. Hope you don't mind if I join my daughter. Headmaster Archer, momentarily stunned, quickly regained his composure. Mr. Schwarzenegger, we're honored to have you. Please, would you like to address our students? Christina watched as her father smiled, not the Hollywood smile they all knew, but the warm, genuine one reserved for teaching moments. He looked at the sea of faces, many now burning with shame, and spoke with the wisdom that had guided nations. You, No, when I first came to America, I had nothing but a gym bag and a dream. People laughed at my accent, my clothes, the way I looked. But here's what I learned. The ones who judge you for what you wear or where you come from, they're showing their weakness, not yours. Zara Monroe, who had earlier that week made a point of moving away from Christina in the cafeteria, sank lower in her seat. Thea Whitman, usually quick with a cutting remark, found herself nodding along with Arnold's words. "My daughter," he continued, placing a gentle hand on Christina's shoulder, "chose to attend this school without using my name. She wanted to earn her place, to prove herself on her own merits. That's true strength. That's true character." The silence in the auditorium was different now. Not the tense quiet of mockery, but the heavy stillness of reflection. Ilara Frost wiped away a tear, remembering how she had refused to partner with Christina in chemistry class, assuming she wouldn't be able to keep up with the advanced curriculum. Naomi West raised her hand, her voice small but clear. "Mr. Schwarzenegger, we didn't know. We should have known who she was," Arnold finished, his tone gentle but firm. "Would that have made her more worthy of respect? The measure of a person isn't in their name or their father's achievements. It's in their actions, their heart, their determination to rise above prejudice and prove themselves through hard work." Christina stood then, her head high, no longer the invisible scholarship student, but a young woman who had inherited her father's strength and her mother's grace. "I didn't want special treatment," she said, her voice steady. "I wanted to earn my place here, to show that success isn't about designer labels or family connections. It's about who you choose to be when no one knows your name." Romina Scott, who had been instrumental in organizing the subtle campaign of exclusion against Christina, felt the weight of her actions as Arnold's words resonated through the hall. Daphne Gray, usually inseparable from the popular crowd, found herself moving closer to Christina's row, as if drawn by the authenticity of the moment. The assembly that had begun as a showcase of social hierarchy had transformed into a lesson in humility and character. As Arnold took the stage at Headmaster Archer's invitation, he shared stories not of his Hollywood success or political triumphs, but of the daily battles against prejudice, the importance of perseverance, and the true meaning of strength. "See," he concluded, looking out at the faces that had shifted from mockery to admiration. "Life will always present you with choices. You can choose to build others up or tear them down. But remember this, the way you treat others when you think they have nothing to offer, that reveals everything about who you are." As the assembly drew to a close, Calla Rivers approached Christina with genuine remorse in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said simply. No excuses, no justifications. Paloma Cruz and Esme Lane followed, each carrying the weight of their previous actions. But Christina, in a moment that proved she was truly her father's daughter, showed the kind of grace that can only come from understanding the human heart. "We all have the chance to start again," she said, echoing the philosophy that had guided her father from a small village in Austria to the heights of global success. The story of that assembly spread far beyond the walls of Westbrook Academy, not because of Arnold Schwarzenegger's surprise appearance, but because of the lesson it taught about judgment, redemption, and the true nature of strength. It became a reminder that sometimes the greatest power lies not in revealing who you are, but in remaining true to yourself when no one knows your name. Have you ever been judged before others knew your full story? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible real-life stories of redemption and triumph. Remember, true character isn't about who you are when everyone's watching. It's about who you choose to be when you think no one is the ripples of that transformative assembly spread through Westbrook Academy like wildfire. In the days that followed, the marble halls that had once echoed with whispered judgments now hummed with a different energy. Christina's story had cracked the carefully maintained facade of social hierarchy, revealing the true character beneath. The designer labels, Lilith Moore, captain of the debate team and known for her razor-sharp wit, found herself replaying Arnold's words during morning practice. The memory of how she had dismissed Christina's application to join the team last month now sat heavy in her stomach. Vienna York, her co-captain, seemed equally lost in thought as they prepared for the upcoming regional championships. In the advanced placement physics class, where Christina had always sat alone at her lab station, Cambria Steele hesitantly approached. Her desk. "I heard you won the state science fair at your old school," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of admiration and regret. Would you want to partner for the quantum mechanics project?" The whispers still followed Christina through the halls, but they had transformed. Students who had once avoided eye contact now watched, with curiosity and respect, as she carried herself with the same quiet dignity she had shown before her father's revelation. Nora Winslow, who had transferred to Westbrook the same week as Christina but had quickly aligned herself with the popular crowd, found herself drawn to the authentic strength that radiated from her former target. During lunch period, the carefully segregated social landscape of the cafeteria began to shift. Talia Monroe, whose family's tech empire had always guaranteed her a prime spot at the elite table, surprised everyone by sitting down next to Christina. "My dad started coding in his garage," she confessed, picking at her salad. "I've never told anyone that before." The charity gala committee meeting that afternoon became a turning point. Danica Reed, the senior class representative known for her meticulous attention to social status, watched as Christina quietly presented a comprehensive proposal for reaching out to local community organizations. The room fell silent as she outlined plans that went far beyond the usual superficial fundraising efforts. "Instead of just writing checks," Christina explained, her voice steady and passionate, "we could create meaningful partnerships. My father taught me that real change comes from understanding and connecting with people, not just throwing money at problems." Morgan Vale, whose family name was synonymous with old money and influence, found herself nodding along. The genuine dedication in Christina's voice made her question the countless charity events she'd attended that seemed more focused on photo opportunities than actual impact. But not everyone was ready to embrace the changing tide. Avery Stone, whose mother chaired the school board, saw her carefully cultivated influence beginning to wane. During study hall, she gathered her remaining allies, Jordan Wells, Drew Maddox, and Peyton Hale, in the library's private study room. "Just because her father is famous doesn't mean she belongs here," Avery whispered, but there was a note of desperation in her voice that betrayed her fading conviction. "We have traditions, standards." Devon Gray, usually quick to agree with Avery, found himself interrupting. "Maybe our standards were wrong," he said quietly, thinking of how Christina had helped him with calculus last week when no one else would take the time. "Maybe we're the ones who need to change." The conversation was overheard by Kendall Ray, the school newspaper editor, who had been grappling with her own role in perpetuating the social barriers at Westbrook. She had written countless articles about the school's elite events and exclusive gatherings, never questioning the underlying message they sent. River Bell, a quiet observer of the school's social dynamics, noticed how Christina's presence had begun to inspire others to reveal their own carefully hidden truths. Harper Monroe, whose designer wardrobe had always seemed like armor, admitted during English class that she worked weekends at her aunt's bookstore, not for money, but because she loved helping young readers find their perfect story. In the art studio after school, Where Christina spent hours working on her portfolio, Emerson Wren discovered her sketching incredible architectural designs. "These are amazing," she breathed, studying the detailed drawings. "How long have you been interested in architecture?" "Since I was little," Christina replied, her passion evident in every word. "My father always said that building something meaningful requires both vision and hard work. It's not about taking the easy path or following someone else's blueprint." The conversation was interrupted by Tatum Brooks, the art club president, who had previously rejected Christina's membership. "Application. We're having a special exhibition next month," she said, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Would you consider displaying your work?" As word of Christina's talents spread, more stories of her quiet acts of kindness emerged. Alina Dunbar revealed how Christina had stayed late to help her prepare for a crucial math exam, even after Alina had publicly mocked her thrift store shoes. Alina Ingram shared how she had found Christina comforting a crying freshman in the bathroom, offering encouragement and support without any thought of social gain. Even the teachers began to notice the subtle but significant changes in their classrooms. Professor Alina Jameson observed how discussions became more inclusive, with students from different social circles actually listening to each other's perspectives. The artificial barriers that had divided the student body for so long were beginning to crumble. During a particularly moving English literature discussion about To Kill a Mockingbird, Alina Langston raised her hand. "I think we're all a bit like the townspeople in the book," she said, glancing at Christina. "We judged without understanding. We let prejudice blind us to someone's true worth." The afternoon sun streamed through the library windows as Christina worked on the charity gala plans. Alina Overton, whose family's influence had always secured her the chair position on every committee, watched her with growing respect. "You know," she said, breaking the silence, "my grandfather started as a janitor in his own company. He taught himself everything he knew." Christina looked up, offering a warm smile that carried no trace of resentment for past treatment. "Success? Stories are rarely as simple as they appear on the surface," she replied. "That's what makes them beautiful." The transformation of Westbrook Academy continued, subtle but undeniable. Anders Ashford, star quarterback who had once changed direction, in the hallway to avoid Christina, now made a point of greeting her every morning. Anders Garrison, whose family's political connections had always set him apart, found himself seeking her advice on a community outreach project. In the school's weekly assembly, Anders Jennings, the student council treasurer, proposed a new mentoring program inspired by Christina's approach to helping others. "We have so much to learn from each other," he said, his voice carrying across the auditorium, "and sometimes the greatest lessons come from those we least expect to be our teachers." As Christina walked to her locker at the end of another busy day, she found Anders North waiting nervously. "My little sister," he began, shuffling his feet. "She's having trouble fitting in at her middle school. Would you mind talking to her? The way you've handled everything here with such grace." The request touched Christina deeply, reminding her of countless conversations with her father about the responsibility that came with influence. "Of course," she said warmly. "Sometimes all we need is someone to remind us of our own strength." Anders Prescott, overhearing the exchange, remembered how his own struggle with dyslexia had been kept secret out of fear of judgment. Inspired by Christina's example, he decided to start a support group for students facing similar challenges. The day ended with a student council meeting, where Anders Voss proposed a resolution to eliminate the unofficial social hierarchies that had long governed student activities. Bo Barlow, whose family's generations of legacy at Westbrook had once seemed like a crown, stood up to second the motion. As Christina gathered her books to head home, Bo Lennon stopped her in the hallway. "Your father's speech last week," he said thoughtfully, It wasn't just about judgment or status. It was about the courage to be authentically ourselves. Christina nodded, thinking of all the lessons her father had taught her about strength, perseverance, and the importance of lifting others up. "Sometimes," she replied, "the hardest thing is not proving others wrong, but staying true to who you are when no one's watching." The sun was setting over Westbrook's prestigious campus as Christina walked to her father's waiting car. The same path she had walked countless times before, feeling invisible and alone, now felt different. Not because of her father's fame or the recent revelation of her identity, but because she had remained steadfast in her values, showing her classmates that true character isn't inherited or bought. It's built through choices, actions, and the courage to remain authentic in the face of judgment. Have you ever witnessed a moment that changed the entire dynamic of your school or workplace? Share your stories of transformation in the comments below. Remember, sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest acts of courage. The autumn air carried a hint of change as Christina arrived at Westbrook Academy for the Charity Gala Committee's final planning session. The grand ballroom, typically reserved for the school's most prestigious events, buzzed with unprecedented energy as students from all social circles worked together, their shared purpose bridging long-standing divides. Bo Strickland, whose family had chaired every major school event for the past decade, watched in amazement as Christina coordinated the various teams with natural leadership that had nothing to do with her famous last name. Bo Xavier, known for his skepticism of change, found himself volunteering for the community outreach program Christina had designed. Bianca Ellison approached with a stack of proposals from local charities. "These organizations you connected us with," she said, genuine admiration in her voice. "They're doing incredible work. I can't believe we never reached out to them before." Bianca Jennings nodded in agreement, already drafting plans for long-term partnerships. The transformation extended beyond the committee. In the hallways, Bianca Lennon, who had once prided herself on knowing everyone's social standing, now engaged in conversations that went deeper than designer labels and family connections. Bianca Penrose found herself questioning the artificial barriers that had defined her entire school experience. During lunch period, Bianca Radcliffe overheard Christina speaking with a group of freshmen about their struggles to fit in. "My father untaught me something important," Christina shared, her voice gentle but firm. "He said that everyone feels like an outsider sometimes, but it's how you handle those moments that defines you." Bianca Zane, who had transferred to Westbrook that semester, felt tears welling up. "I thought I was the only one," she whispered, thinking of countless lunches spent alone in the library. Carmen Archer reached over and squeezed her hand, remembering her own early days at the school. The afternoon brought an unexpected visit from Arnold Schwarzenegger, not as a celebrity or former governor, but as a father supporting his daughter's vision. Carmen Easton watched in awe as he rolled up his sleeves to help move tables, sharing stories of his own humble beginnings with anyone who would listen. Carmen Iverson, whose carefully maintained image had never allowed for manual labor, found herself inspired to join in. As she worked alongside Arnold and Christina, Carmen Penrose realized that true leadership wasn't about maintaining distance, but about bringing people together. "You know," Arnold said, pausing to address the gathered students, "success isn't just about reaching the top. It's about lifting others up along the way." Carmen Radcliffe, who had spent years climbing the social ladder, felt those words strike a chord deep within her heart. Carmen Rowley observed how Christina embodied her father's philosophy, never flaunting her connection to fame, but instead using her influence to create meaningful change. Carmen Urban, who had once dismissed Christina as a scholarship student, now saw the quiet strength that had been there all along. The day took an unexpected turn when Cassius Bexley, president of the Student Investment Club, approached Christina with an idea. "What if we created a scholarship fund?" he suggested, inspired by her story. "Not just for tuition, but for all the hidden costs that keep talented students from attending Westbrook." Cassius Rowley and Cassius Yardley immediately offered to help structure the fund, their financial expertise finding new purpose. Dahlia Ellison, whose family's foundation had always focused on high-profile donations, began researching sustainable education initiatives. In the library, Dahlia Garrison gathered a group to discuss expanding the mentoring program. Dahlia Granger shared how Christina's example had inspired her to start tutoring at the local middle school, while Dahlia Vernon revealed her plans to organize a career shadow day for first-generation college aspirants. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows as Dahlia Winslow approached Christina with tears in her eyes. "My brother," she began hesitantly, "he gave up on school because he felt like he didn't belong. Would you be willing to talk to him?" Christina's response embodied the compassion that had become her hallmark. "Sometimes," she said softly, "we all need someone to remind us that our worth isn't determined by where we come from, but by where we're determined to go." Dahlia Zeller, overhearing the exchange, thought about her own journey at Westbrook. As the daughter of new money, she had spent years trying to prove she belonged. Now, watching Christina's quiet revolution, she realized that belonging wasn't about proving anything. It was about being authentic. The preparation for the gala continued as Dorian Bexley coordinated with local media to cover the event. But unlike previous years, the focus wasn't on showcasing Westbrook's elite status. Instead, Dorian Carver worked to highlight the community partnerships and student initiatives that had grown from Christina's vision. Dorian Ingram, whose social media influence had once been used to enforce social hierarchies, now used his platform to share stories of students breaking barriers and building bridges. Dorian Langston documented the transformation through his photography, capturing moments of genuine connection that would have been unthinkable months ago. As the day drew to a close, Dorian Montgomery gathered the committee for a final review. The gala would be unlike anything Westbrook had ever seen, not because of its extravagance, but because of its heart. Dorian Quimby, reading through the program, smiled at how perfectly it reflected Christina's influence. In the quiet of the empty ballroom, Dorian Urban and Dorian Wexler helped Christina finalize the seating arrangements. Gone were the carefully calculated social groupings of previous years. Instead, the tables mixed students, parents, and community partners in a way that encouraged real conversation. "Your father would be proud," Dorian Winslow said softly, noting how Christina had transformed what could have been a simple fundraiser into an opportunity for genuine community building. Elina Ashford agreed, adding that the event would set a new standard for school functions. The next morning, as students arrived for the final day of preparations, Elina Carver noticed something different in the atmosphere. The usual tension that preceded major school events was replaced by a sense of shared purpose. Elena Easton watched as students who had never spoken to each other worked side by side, their previous social boundaries forgotten. Elena Garrison approached Christina with a stack of RSVPs from local community leaders. "They're amazed by what we're doing," she reported, her voice filled with pride. "Some of them said they've never seen a school event so focused on real impact." As Christina reviewed the responses, Elena Halstead couldn't help but marvel at how one person's authenticity had catalyzed such profound change. Elena Keaton, who had once judged others by their pedigree, now found herself evaluating character instead. The day brought challenges, as all major events do. When a catering issue threatened to derail the plans, Elena Langston watched in admiration. as Christina handled the crisis with grace and practical problem-solving. Elina Overton, who had witnessed countless social meltdowns over far smaller issues, saw a new model of leadership in action. As the sun set on the eve of the gala, Emile Ashford gathered the committee for a final meeting. The energy in the room was electric as Emile Foster reviewed the next day's schedule. Emile Iverson couldn't help but comment on how different this event felt from previous years. "It's not just about putting on a show anymore," Emile Jameson observed, looking around at the transformed ballroom. "It's about creating something meaningful." Emile Lennon nodded in agreement, remembering how Christina had insisted on incorporating elements that would facilitate genuine connections between attendees. Emile Merrill and Emile Overton worked late into the evening, ensuring every detail aligned with Christina's vision of inclusion and impact. As they worked, Emile Rowley shared how his perspective on leadership had shifted since witnessing Christina's approach to bringing people together. The night ended with Emile Vernon and Emile Zane helping Christina gather her things. "You've changed. This place," Emile Zane said simply, gesturing to the ballroom that would soon host an event unlike any in Westbrook's history. As Christina walked to her father's waiting car, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From being the mocked scholarship student to catalyzing a transformation in one of the country's most elite schools, she had remained true to the values her father had instilled in her. "Ready for tomorrow?" Arnold asked as she slid into the passenger seat. Christina smiled, thinking of all the barriers that had been broken and bridges that had been built. "Ready to show everyone what real strength looks like," she replied, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that had become her trademark. "Have you ever witnessed someone turn exclusion into an opportunity for positive change? Share your stories of transformation in the comments below. Remember, sometimes the greatest impact comes from staying true to your values, even when it means standing alone. The morning of the charity gala dawned with an energy that crackled through Westbrook Academy's halls like electricity. Farrah Iverson, arriving early to oversee the final preparations, paused at the ballroom entrance, struck by how the space had been transformed not just physically, but symbolically. Farrah Keaton and Farrah Nolan worked seamlessly together, arranging centerpieces that featured artwork from local children's programs, a departure from the usual expensive floral displays. Each table told a story of community connection, a visual representation of Christina's vision for breaking down barriers. "My father always says that true luxury is having the power to make a difference," Christina shared as she joined them, rolling up her sleeves to help. Farrah North watched in amazement as the daughter of Arnold Schwarzenegger threw herself into the hands-on work without hesitation. Farrah Prescott, whose family had chaired countless high society events, found herself re-evaluating everything she thought she knew about status and influence. As she observed Christina guiding volunteers with quiet authority, Farrah Voss realized that real leadership had nothing to do with commanding attention and everything to do with inspiring action. The morning's activities were interrupted when Farrah Zane rushed in with news that would have once caused panic among the social elite. "The governor's daughter can't make it," she announced, and 3 tables of society families cancelled last minute. But instead of dismay, Christina saw opportunity. "Perfect," she said, surprising everyone. "Call the community center. Those seats won't go empty. They'll just be filled with people who can help us create real change." Finian Garrison immediately pulled out his phone, while Finian Granger started rearranging the seating charts. Finian Iverson, who had initially resisted Christina's plans to mix social circles at the tables, now found himself excited by the prospect of meaningful conversations with people from all walks of life. Finian Osborne watched as Christina's calm confidence turned what could have been a social disaster into a moment of purpose. As the afternoon approached, Finian York arrived with a surprise. Arnold Schwarzenegger had arranged for several of his influential friends to attend, not as celebrities, but as active participants in the community initiatives Christina had organized. Finian Zeller observed how she received this news with the same graceful humility she'd shown throughout the year. The preparation continued as Gia Archer coordinated with the student performers who would be sharing their talents throughout the evening. Gone were the usual classical quartet and professional entertainers, replaced by diverse performances that celebrated the school's hidden talents. Gia Harlow, a gifted vocalist who had always been too intimidated to perform, found herself encouraged by Christina to share her voice. Gia Ingram and Gia Jennings worked on the multimedia presentation that would play during the gala, featuring stories of community impact and student transformation. Gia Langston, reviewing the final cut, wiped away tears as she watched interviews with students whose lives had been changed by Christina's initiatives. The afternoon brought unexpected challenges as Gia Underwood discovered a problem with the catering. But Christina's response showcased the leadership style that had become her hallmark. "Let's see this as a chance to support local businesses," she suggested, quickly mobilizing a team to reach out to family-owned restaurants in the community. Gia Winslow marveled at how Christina turned every obstacle into an opportunity for connection. Griffin Archer, who had initially doubted the feasibility of such an inclusive event, now found himself fully convinced of its potential impact. As guests began to arrive, Griffin Ashford and Griffin Barlow manned the welcome desk, greeting both society figures and community leaders with equal warmth. Griffin Delaney noticed how the usual social anxiety that accompanied such events was replaced by genuine enthusiasm for the evening's purpose. Arnold Schwarzenegger arrived without fanfare, immediately joining Christina in welcoming guests and making introductions. Griffin Jameson observed how father and daughter worked in perfect sync, their shared values evident in every interaction. Griffin Overton couldn't help but notice how Arnold's presence amplified rather than overshadowed Christina's leadership. The ballroom filled with an unprecedented mix of attendees as Griffin Truitt guided people to their seats. Hannah Archer watched in amazement as billion-dollar CEOs sat beside community organizers, engaging in animated discussions about local initiatives. Hannah Easton, who had once measured event success by their exclusivity, found herself moved by the authentic connections forming around her. Hannah Fairchild overheard conversations about collaboration and community support, replacing the usual social posturing and networking. As dinner began, Hannah Garrison rose to deliver the opening remarks. Her voice carried across the ballroom as she shared how Christina's influence had transformed not just the event, but the entire school culture. Hannah Iverson, recording the speech for the school newspaper, noted how every word rang with genuine emotion. Christina took the stage next, her presence commanding attention not through power or status, but through authentic passion for the community she had helped build. Hannah Osborne watched as the audience hung on every word, particularly when Christina shared stories of students who had found their voice through the new initiatives. "Real change," Christina said, her voice clear and confident, "doesn't come from maintaining barriers. It comes from breaking them down and building bridges in their place." Hannah Underwood noticed several prominent alumni nodding in agreement, their checkbooks already out to support the proposed programs. The evening progressed with Hannah Xavier and Hannah York coordinating the student presentations. Each performance and speech showcased the incredible talent that had always existed at Westbrook, but had often been overshadowed by social hierarchies. Hugo Easton presented the new scholarship initiative, his voice filled with pride as he explained how it would support students who brought diverse perspectives and experiences to the school community. Hugo Jennings followed with an announcement about the mentoring program's expansion, drawing enthusiastic applause. As dinner concluded, Hugo Lennon and Hugo Merrill began facilitating the community partnership discussions at each table. Hugo, Penrose observed how natural these connections felt, wondering why they hadn't attempted this format years ago. The evening's highlight came when Hugo Quimby unveiled the long-term impact goals Christina had helped develop. Hugo Radcliffe watched as attendees from all backgrounds eagerly signed up to support various initiatives, their shared enthusiasm bridging any remaining social divides. As the gala approached its final hours, Hugo Xavier gathered feedback from attendees, each response more positive than the last. Hugo Yardley compiled the pledges of support, both financial and personal, that would help ensure the evening's impact lasted far beyond a single night. Arnold took the stage one final time, but instead of delivering a prepared speech, he simply shared his pride in watching his daughter catalyze such meaningful change. "Success isn't about proving you're better than others," he said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "It's about making things better for others." As the evening wound down, Iker Delaney and Iker Ingram helped gather contact information from attendees eager to stay involved with the new community initiatives. Zika Osborne noticed how many business cards were being exchanged between people who might never have met under the old social system. Christina moved through the room, thanking everyone for their participation and support. Iker Prescott watched as she gave equal attention to every guest, from the mayor to the local food bank director. Iker Rowley observed how her genuine interest in each person's story encouraged deeper connections. As the last guests departed, Iker Vernon and Ileana Carver helped Christina gather the evening's documentation, photos, pledges, and partnership agreements that would serve as the foundation for lasting change. Ileana Ellison couldn't help but note how different this felt from previous year's events, where success was measured in social media coverage and celebrity attendance. Standing in the now quiet ballroom, Ileana Halstead turned to Christina. "You didn't just change an event," she said softly. "You changed how we see ourselves and each other." Arnold approached his daughter, his pride evident in every step. "Ready to head home, champion?" he asked, using the nickname he'd given her years ago. Christina looked around the room one final time, taking in the physical evidence of barriers broken and bridges built. "You know, Dad," she replied, "sometimes the biggest victories aren't about proving people wrong. They're about showing them a better way forward." Have you ever been part of transforming an exclusive event into an inclusive celebration? Share your experiences of breaking down barriers and building community in the comments below. Remember, real change starts with having the courage to imagine things differently. The morning after the gala, Westbrook Academy buzzed with an energy unlike anything in its prestigious history. Ileana Overton arrived early to find students gathered around their phones, but instead of sharing social media highlights or fashion critiques, they were excitedly discussing the community initiatives launched at the event. Ileana Penrose pulled up the local news coverage, which focused not on the celebrity attendance or designer dresses, but on the groundbreaking partnerships formed between the school and local organizations. Ileana Thatcher watched as Christina walked through the halls, responding to congratulations with the same humble grace she'd shown before anyone knew her name. "My father always says that the real work begins after the applause ends," Christina shared as Ileana Vernon approached with questions about implementing the new mentoring program. Ileana Yardley nodded thoughtfully, already drafting plans for the student volunteer coordination. The morning's assembly brought another surprise as Ileana Zane announced that several major corporations, inspired by the gala's success, had pledged to support Westbrook's community initiatives. Jessamine Ellison watched Christina's reaction, not pride in the attention, but quiet satisfaction in the potential for real impact. Jessamine Halstead, whose family had long dominated the school's social scene, found herself re-evaluating everything she thought she knew about influence and power. As she observed Christina fielding questions about the new scholarship program, Jessamine Nolan realized that true leadership wasn't about maintaining exclusivity, it was about creating opportunity. The transformation continued as Jessamine Osborne reported unprecedented interest in the Community Service Club. Students who had once competed for social status now collaborated on outreach projects, inspired by Christina's example. Jessamine Urban and Jessamine Winslow worked together to coordinate the first wave of mentoring partnerships with local schools. Joaquin Ashford, president of the Student Council, called an emergency meeting to discuss restructuring school events around the new model of inclusion and impact. Joaquin Harlow presented data from the gala, showing how the mixed seating arrangements had led to valuable connections and opportunities for collaboration. As the council debated the changes, Joaquin Lennon noticed how Christina listened more than she spoke, offering guidance only when asked. Joaquin Nolan marveled at her ability to lead without dominating, to influence without imposing. Even Joaquin Overton, who had initially resisted changes to school traditions, found himself advocating for more inclusive practices. The afternoon brought a visit from the school board as Joaquin Penrose guided them through the gala's outcomes. Joaquin Quimby presented the financial results, not just the impressive fundraising totals, but the sustainable partnerships that would continue generating support for community programs. Arnold Schwarzenegger made another appearance. This time to meet with Joaquin Winslow and the Career Development Office. Instead of simply giving an inspirational speech, he worked with Joaquin Yardley to establish a mentoring network that would connect students with professionals from diverse backgrounds and industries. Killian Bexley, who had once measured success by his family's social connections, found himself deeply invested in the new initiatives. Working alongside Killian Carver, he helped develop a program that would provide internship opportunities to students from underserved communities. The changes weren't limited to official programs. Killian Dunbar noticed how lunch tables that had once been strictly segregated by social status now featured lively discussions between students from all backgrounds. Gillian Lennon overheard conversations about community impact, replacing gossip about designer brands and vacation homes. As Christina collaborated with Killian Wexler on expanding the scholarship program, Killian Yardley couldn't help but note how her father's influence showed in her leadership style, strong yet humble, confident yet inclusive. Kira Langston observed that Christina had inherited not just Arnold's name, but his dedication to lifting others up. The afternoon brought another wave of media attention as Kira North arrived to interview Christina for a national education magazine. But true to form, Christina redirected the focus to the students and community partners who had made the initiatives possible. Kira Underwood watched as she turned what could have been a personal spotlight into a platform for highlighting others' contributions. In the library, Kira Wexler organized a meeting of the new Student Leadership Council, where Kira Winslow presented ideas for expanding the Community Partnership Program. Lana Bexley noticed how Christina encouraged every voice to be heard, especially those who had previously felt marginalized. The impact extended beyond Westbrook's walls, as Lana Channing reported interest from other prestigious schools looking to replicate the program. Lana Dunbar coordinated with Lana Easton to document the transformation process, creating a blueprint for institutional change that prioritized inclusion over exclusivity. As the day progressed, Lana Ellison worked with Christina to establish guidelines for future events. Gone were the arbitrary social hierarchies that had once determined everything from seating arrangements to speaking opportunities. Lana Fairchild marveled at how natural the new approach felt. wondering why they had ever done things differently. Arnold joined Christina for an afternoon meeting with Lana Iverson and the Alumni Association. Success isn't just about individual achievement, he reminded them, his voice carrying the wisdom of experience. It's about creating opportunities for others to succeed. Lana Radcliffe watched as several prominent alumni pledged their support, not just financially, but with commitments to personally mentor students from diverse backgrounds. Lana Zane noticed how Christina's quiet revolution had inspired even the most traditional stakeholders to embrace change. As the school day drew to a close, Leif Ashford gathered data on the initial impact of the new programs. The numbers were impressive, but as Leif Bexley pointed out, the real success lay in the transformed school culture. Leigh Foster observed students from different social and economic backgrounds working together on community projects, their previous prejudices forgotten. Christina's influence had created what Leif Granger called a ripple effect of authenticity. Students who had once hidden their backgrounds or interests now felt empowered to be themselves. Leif Kensington shared how his parents' immigrant story, once a source of shame, had become a point of pride and inspiration. The evening brought a community dinner where Leif Merrill watched students and local residents share meals and stories with equal enthusiasm. Leif Osborne noticed how Christina moved through the crowd, ensuring everyone felt welcomed and heard, just as she had done since her first day at Westbrook. As Leif Overton helped coordinate transportation for community members, Leif Penrose reflected on how much had changed since Christina first walked through Westbrook's gates. The school that had once prided itself on exclusivity now measured its success by its impact on others. Christina gathered with Leif Winslow and the student committee to plan the next phase of community initiatives. Leif Xavier noticed how she consistently deflected praise, focusing instead on expanding opportunities for others. Her father's lessons about strength and humility had clearly taken root. Standing in the courtyard as the sun set, Christina shared a quiet moment with Arnold. "You know," he said, watching students and community members leaving together, sharing contact information and making plans for future collaboration. "This is what real power looks like. Not the power to exclude, but the power to include." Christina smiled, thinking of her journey from mocked scholarship student to catalyst for change. "And real strength," she added, "isn't about proving you belong. It's about helping others feel they belong too." Have you ever witnessed someone turn their own experience of exclusion into a force for positive change? Share your stories of transformation and community building in the comments below. Remember, sometimes the greatest legacy we can create is helping others find their place in the world. 1 month after the transformative gala, Westbrook Academy prepared for its annual Legacy Day, traditionally a celebration of the school's elite history. But this year, under Christina's influence, the event would take on a very different meaning. Leif Xavier watched as students gathered in the auditorium, no longer separated by invisible social boundaries. Merrick Archer opened the ceremony with a presentation that tracked the school's evolution from an exclusive institution to a beacon of inclusive excellence. Merrick Ellison shared testimonials from students whose lives had been changed by the new initiatives, while Merrick Halstead presented data showing the positive impact on academic performance and student engagement. True legacy, Christina addressed the assembly, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had become her trademark, isn't about preserving barriers. It's about building bridges that will last long after we're gone. Merrick Jennings noticed how her words resonated with both students and faculty, many nodding in recognition of the truth they contained. Merrick Kensington, whose family had attended Westbrook for generations, stood to share how his perspective had shifted. "I used to think legacy was about maintaining tradition," he admitted. "Now I understand it's about creating traditions worth keeping." Merrick Sutter watched as several other legacy students voiced similar revelations. The morning's activities demonstrated the profound changes in school culture as Merrick Urban coordinated mixed group workshops focused on community impact. Merrick Winslow observed students who would never have interacted before now collaborating enthusiastically on service projects. Arnold Schwarzenegger made a surprise appearance, but instead of delivering a speech, he joined Merrick Zane's group in their discussion about breaking down social barriers. His presence reinforced, rather than overshadowed, the day's message about authentic leadership and genuine connection. Mina Nolan presented the expanded scholarship program, which had already received unprecedented support from alumni and community partners. Mina Osborne shared how the mentoring initiative had connected students across social and economic boundaries, creating relationships that transcended traditional social hierarchies. As the day progressed, Mina Sutter and Mina Vernon facilitated discussions about maintaining the momentum of change. Mina Voss noticed how students who had once been silent now spoke confidently about their experiences and aspirations. Mina York documented these conversations for the school newsletter, capturing the authentic voices of a community in transformation. The afternoon brought presentations from community partners as Nico Dunbar introduced leaders from local organizations that had begun working with Westbrook students. Nico Fairchild reported on the success of joint initiatives, while Nico Keaton shared plans for expanding these partnerships. Christina moved through the auditorium, listening more than speaking, embodying her father's lessons about humble leadership. Nico Truitt observed how she consistently redirected attention from herself to the collective achievements of the community. Even when Nico Voss attempted to highlight her role in the transformation, Christina emphasized the collaborative nature of the change. The day took an unexpected turn when Noah Delaney announced that several other prestigious schools had reached out to learn from Westbrook's example. Noah Granger presented a framework for sharing their experiences, while Noah Montgomery outlined plans for a conference on inclusive excellence in education. Working with Noah Quimby and Noah Vernon, Christina helped develop guidelines for maintaining authentic community connections. Noah Yardley noticed how she insisted on measures to ensure that future initiatives would continue to prioritize genuine impact over superficial gestures. The Legacy Day activities continued as Noah York coordinated panel discussions featuring students from diverse backgrounds. Odette Fairchild moderated conversations about maintaining inclusivity beyond special events, while Odette Jameson shared how the transformation had affected daily life at Westbrook. Arnold joined Odette Urban and Odette Vernon for a session on leadership and authenticity. "My daughter," he shared, "taught me something important about strength. It's not about standing above others. It's about standing with them." Odette Xavier watched as students absorbed this message, understanding its significance for their own leadership journeys. The afternoon brought a series of student-led workshops as Odin Barlow and Odin Carver facilitated discussions about sustaining cultural change. Odin Ellison presented research showing how inclusive practices had improved both academic outcomes and student well-being. Christina worked alongside Odin Truitt and Odin Zeller, helping younger students develop their own initiatives for community engagement. Paxton Archer noticed how she consistently empowered others to take ownership of projects, providing guidance without taking control. The day's events culminated in a community dinner where Paxton Channing and Paxton Delaney coordinated seating to ensure continued mixing of social groups. Paxton Easton observed how these arrangements, once controversial, now felt natural to most students. As the evening progressed, Paxton Granger shared impact stories from the past month. Paxton Harlow presented data showing increased participation, in community service, while Paxton Keaton reported growing interest in mentoring programs from both students and alumni. Christina took the stage one final time, standing beside Paxton North as they announced plans for the future. "This isn't just about changing our school," she explained. "It's about changing how we see our role in the larger community." Paxton Urban watched as students and faculty alike responded with enthusiastic support for this vision. Arnold joined his daughter on stage, but instead of speaking, he simply stood beside her, letting her words carry the weight of the moment. Paxton Vernon noticed how his presence amplified rather than overshadowed her message, demonstrating the kind of supportive leadership they hoped to foster. As the evening drew to a close, Christina gathered with Priya Fairchild and Priya Keaton to review the day's outcomes. Priya Montgomery shared feedback from participants, while Priya Radcliffe compiled suggestions for future improvements. Standing in the courtyard as the last guests departed, Christina reflected on the journey that had brought them here. "You know," she said to her father, "when I first came to Westbrook, I thought success meant proving I belonged. Now, I understand it's about helping others know they belong too." Arnold smiled, recognizing in his daughter the same strength that had carried him from a small Austrian village to global influence. "That's the thing about real power," he replied. "It's not about what you can get, it's about what you can give." The transformation of Westbrook Academy had become more than a story about a famous father defending his daughter. It had evolved into a testament to the power of authentic leadership, the importance of inclusive community, and the lasting impact of choosing bridge building over barrier maintenance. As Christina walked through the empty halls one last time, that evening, she passed the trophy cases that had once symbolized Westbrook's exclusive status. Now, alongside the athletic and academic awards, new photos showed students working together on community projects, mentoring younger children, and building connections across social boundaries. "Sometimes," she whispered, touching the glass gently, "the greatest victory isn't in proving critics wrong, it's in showing them a better way forward." The legacy of that transformative year would continue long after Christina graduated, not because of her famous name or her father's intervention, but because she had shown an entire community the power of authentic leadership and genuine inclusion. Have you ever been part of a movement that transformed not just rules or structures, but hearts and minds? Share your stories of lasting change in the comments below. Remember, sometimes the most powerful legacy we can leave is showing others that a different way is possible. Like and subscribe for more inspiring stories of transformation and redemption. Until next time, remember that true strength isn't about standing above others. It's about lifting them up alongside you.